Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Coffee Connections. I'm your host, Seth Weiner, also known as your Rocktioneer. Welcome back. I'm excited to have Lily with us. I'll get into introducing her in just a second. But those of you wondering where you landed, you're at Coffee Connections, which are conversations with nonprofit innovators here in the Atlanta area where we share their missions and chat about their current successes and challenges. Today, we are joined by Lily Pabian. Lily, if you don't know, let me pull up her bio for you and tell you a little bit about Lily. Lily is with We Love BuHi. That's Buford Highway for those that are inside the perimeter or maybe outside or confused. She's the executive director, and she started with them as executive director in 2019. When asked why she loves Buford Highway, her answer is very simple. Because it was our family's first home. As former development director for a local nonprofit serving individuals who are blind or visually impaired, Lily understands the importance of impact and focuses on the relationships behind the experiences through her campaigns and programs. So I'm really excited to share about all of what they're doing. But ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and bring Lily into the conversation. So with a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, Lily.
Hi. Thanks for having me, Seth.
Yeah, thanks for joining us on a recommendation. I'm excited to talk with you. But before we get going, it's time for our coffee talk portion of Coffee Connections. Are you a coffee drinker?
I am.
Well, then what's the chance you got a coffee mug? Oh, she does. Let's take a look. Oh, that's a beautiful mug. Tell us about that mug. Is that Frida?
So this is Frida Kahlo, the Mexican artist. And I was introduced to her by my best friend, who's a Colombian gal here. She lives off Buford Highway. And just introduced to her art and the culture, the Mexican culture, and just a fierce woman, you know. And I started calling myself the Asian Frida because I just loved everything about her. So I collect a lot of her things, and so people buy me coffee mugs. This is one of my favorites. It just inspires me.
Yeah, well, Frida's an inspiration for sure. And if you don't know Frida, folks, go on Netflix. There's a great there's a great movie on her. So definitely check that out. But we're here about Lily. Lily, you're a coffee drinker. You got a coffee mug. Do you like your coffee dark or light?
I like it black.
Okay, all right. Hot or cold?
I just love the taste of coffee. So I'm, typically I have mine just plain.
Okay, hot or cold? Preference?
Hot.
And drip or French press, if you had the preference?
Ooh, if I had the choice, French press.
Right,
but I don't.
We're talking.
You just do the drip. But I do use freshly ground coffee beans in the morning. So.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, hopefully you're caffeinated because it's time. I'm going to hand over the mic to you. Please tell us all about We Love BuHi.
Well, first of all, I want to applaud you for pronouncing it BuHi. It is for Buford Highway. And we started as an Instagram account actually in 2015. It was through the vision and lens of Marion Liu, our founder. And in 2018, it became a bona fide 501c3 nonprofit, charitable nonprofit. And our mission is, and our passion is to preserve the multicultural identity of the Buford Highway corridor. And a lot of people ask, well, what's the Buford Highway corridor? And so when we talk about it, it's an area just south or just inside the perimeter, but it includes 3 municipalities, Brookhaven, Chamblee, and Dorville. So it's about 8-mile stretch. And we have 4 programs that we run to meet our mission. It's under 4 categories. One is arts and culture BuHi. The other one is Biz BuHi, talking about all the local businesses, the immigrant-owned businesses, and then Story BuHi, which really is about the oral histories and the voices behind the people of Buford Highway. And then the 4th one came out of COVID, and it was our pivot. A lot of organizations, a lot of everybody's talking about pivoting, and ours was really to meet needs at the doorstep, and it's all called Care BuHi, and our main focus is food insecurity.
Wow, that's actually really amazing. So what started as a celebration is actually turning into a community preservation. Celebration to preservation.
Yeah. I mean, preservation, I grew up here. I tell a lot of folks my story, my personal story is we moved here in the late 70s. And, back then there really wasn't the diversity that we see today. And it really came out of a huge development boom at that time, particularly in Gwinnett. We moved down here before Jimmy Carter was, Jimmy Carter, and really spoke to the industrial businesses. Certainly, the General Motors was headquartered in Doorbell. And so a lot of job opportunities. And in addition, it was just such a central place in terms of getting to major highways. And if you're doing import-exporting business, being close to the airport is super key, right? Oh, yeah. And then, of course, transportation, access to public transportation. And so overall, it was the affordability. Back then, it was really a blue-collar, population. And so, and then slowly, we moved to Norcross off of Buford Highway. Mm-hmm. So we still there, and I grew up there. But yeah, so this place is very near and dear to my heart. It really helped me connect to my roots. I'm Chinese, and my family was really involved in developing the Chinese Community Center way back. It actually started in a warehouse in North Lake Mall and made its way through a couple of churches. And actually, there's a church near Toco Hills. We were talking about Toco Hills. It's right off North Druid Hills. There's a church. That's where I learned Chinese. That's where we went to Chinese school. That was kind of like the humble beginnings of how this community, started. And then the current cultural center, which is at Atlanta Chinatown in Chamblee. That's where we, just put we rooted there. And it was, all about just sharing, cultural experiences. Where we had a lot of variety shows. My mom and I volunteered a lot. We weren't in the shows, but we were in the backstage helping out. But it was cool. It was cool to I remember the first time I saw somebody reenact a Chinese opera. I never really, heard Chinese opera or seen it. So it was really cool to grow up with things. And of course the discovery of just, through foods, having our first bites of ethnic foods that my parents had eaten, back in Taiwan and China, but they didn't know how to give that to me here. So it was really, as I started getting into my teen years, it was just a way for us to really connect and learn about our heritage and really develop that pride around it.
Yeah, that's wonderful. For those that never been to Atlanta, when you first step foot in Atlanta, you move here, you're visiting, you have to go to Buford Highway because the food is just unbelievable. And so there's a lot more to it. Are you getting a little bit of feedback? Are you good?
No, I'm good.
I'm going to take my headphones out, then I won't hear it.
I tried to put mine on, it didn't work.
I think I see what's going on. All right, we're good. I apologize. I think I know what's going on here. I'm going to try to turn that off. Let's see if that does it better. All right. Don't know what's happening, but we're going to play forward. So if you've never been to Buford Highway, though, it's just an amazing place. The restaurants there are incredible because they're authentic. But what you're saying is not just the restaurants that are authentic, it's the culture. Can you talk more about some of the programs that you've developed and how you've implemented them?
Well, one of our, the Cornerstone program was two things. It was really our storytelling and arts and design. And this is when our former executive director, founder, Marian, that was her passion, really, in terms of urban development and how those things can impact gentrification or even speed it up. And so, and what are the impacts? So I think in the early days, the two famous programs would be the Living Walls Atlanta collaboration. Living Walls Atlanta is also a nonprofit that does murals. And we partnered with them, and what came out of it was, I think, 10, 12 pieces of just beautiful murals that really represented visually the people that live here, the homes of where people have migrated from. And even, not even just the visual, they all had really, really deep messages, and that really does resonate to immigrants. And so I think those are just really important ways to make people, say, hey, this is a home, and I feel a piece of myself here, right? Or that connection, right. The connection. The other piece of it is the storytelling, which is our oral history project. And that is a collaboration with Georgia State University. And we archive stories, the immigrant stories, people that have been connected to Buford Highway, whether they had lived here, whether they had, was a business owner, whatever connection they had. Mm-hmm. So it's a way to preserve those stories. It's a way to collect it, and they can decide if they want it to be published. Because a lot of times when you're doing oral history, it's an interview, right? And you want people to feel, comfortable, that after it's done, because a lot of times people are doing interviews and they may say things that perhaps they didn't, mean to say, or perhaps
really people do that. Really people do that?
Oh yeah. The thing is, you have to understand, we come from all multiculturals, multi backgrounds, but also a lot of perspectives of trust. Things that maybe we shouldn't talk about, or maybe maybe I don't want known yet, so it's complex, as humans are, right? So, but we really do pride ourselves. Our board of directors worked really hard. I got 2 attorneys on there, but no, they really wanted us to keep that level of integrity intact, so that our subjects can make that decision to the very end. It's their story, so we want them to be really comfortable sharing it. But those are 2 big programs. We are getting deeper in Biz BuHi. We did a lot of gamification, just fun ways to really promote the restaurants. I think restaurants is certainly the lowest hanging fruit, so to speak, right? When people think about Buford Highway, it's like, oh yeah, all the restaurants. And so what we aim to do is really have that initial engagement, right? But then, take those opportunities. We could draw them in a little deeper, and that's through our stories or our arts, or, and now our food initiatives. It's really to build the awareness of the communities that are here, that don't just kind of go in and out as visitors come in to eat and leave. You know what I mean? So we have really, really deep roots, deep connections. We have agencies as old as 30 years old. I actually think LAA is celebrating their 50th, the Latin American Association, next year, I think. So you've got, and they're right on Buford Highway. They actually went back to Buford Highway. I think they moved at some point. But it just really speaks to the overall resiliency. I mean, when you think about Atlanta and how much it's changed, and you've been here for 20 years, and you've seen that change. I've been here, since the late 70s, and it is, it's fast moving. And I feel like we are sort of in that mode from, so we want to make sure that we're hitting all the marks.
So what does your organization then help prevent, say, a Bed Bath & Beyond come in and take over a shopping center?
I wish we had that power. No, but we are in the conversations. We absolutely have a seat at the table. And that is, this whole We Love BuHi. It's a movement. It's this thing that I think really does, whether it's food, whether it's a community or church or a cultural center, whatever it is, we do feel sort of as protectors that people don't know to protect something if they don't know what that community really means, right? And we have pockets of those types of communities all over Atlanta, like sister cities, right? And so I think we just think it's super important to keep raising awareness. But absolutely, we have seat at the tables with city folks, county folks, and if anything else, we just want to make sure that we are speaking how we feel about this, and so.
Yeah.
to support the community.
And we keep saying stuff about food, but you do have the taste of BuHi coming up, right?
Yeah, it actually kicked off on World Food Day, which was last Friday. This is our way. We have 27 participating restaurants. And this really is our way of, I talked about the BuHi Shuffle before. It was a gamification, and you would go around to different restaurants that were participating, and you would collect a card, right? And you build a deck of cards. And so we're doing a little bit of a twist, and it is we've combined storytelling in these, because these restaurants, these owners, they're not just a dish. They're not just a stereotype, right? A dumpling or a taco. They are so much deeper. They have family stories. They have family recipes that come with the experience. And it's really, I think it really makes, or I hope that when you are sitting down and eating, and accompanying it is as a storybook, a sort of a little bit deeper understanding of the owners and their background, I think it does give a deeper appreciation that it's not just, a one and done, food to go type of thing or whatever. So it's really cool. And there's a contest that's attached to it. So when folks get to sign up to play, they just have to show us a proof of receipt. And at 5, they get, a classic Buford Highway postcard, and a sticker, a fan sticker. And then at the 10 level, I think there's other prizes, a gift card to Buford Highway, restaurant. The ultimate prize, that means if you've done all 27 restaurants and you show us the proof of that, we will put you in a drawing to have a personal tour of Buford Highway from me.
All right.
And we will, and I promise it will be fun, because I love to talk. But I will give you just a piece of how I grew up, sort of the backstories of all the little nooks and crannies of Buford Highway. And lunch, of course, will be on me.
That's awesome. So it's kind of like a Buford Highway bingo in a way.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a little that for sure. But we just kind of wanted to keep it, instead of like diagonal, or we don't want to have too many rules to it, because this truly is our effort, our way to get our restaurants exposure during a time when these restaurants were really hit, particularly the Asian ones, with sort of the narrative of all of the prejudice that was happening at the beginning of this pandemic. Businesses were dropping as intensely as 40% back in January, and so you're seeing. They pick themselves up, they pivot, they move, and then there's another dip, whatever that dip, whatever the reasoning is. It's not over yet. So we still are trying to just help them work through this the best we can.
But as silly as it sounds, people bought into it, but got afraid of going to Chinese restaurants because of a Chinese virus.
Absolutely.
And rhetoric like that, man, that's awful. That's really awful.
Yeah. I mean, I just remember seeing, Chinese New Year, or the Lunar Festival at the end of January. That's when it took place this year. Yeah. And usually, like, you go in there, and every single year it just got bigger and bigger, and it would be like a New York subway, like you're just tight, squeezing through or whatever. And this year, it really did drop. It was a visual drop. And it was just, that to me really kind of hit me like, oh. And then from there, I remember that Monday, right following it, I started, walking along and just going to restaurant, just talking to people. And they said, yeah, their businesses had been impacted in a way. And at that time, there was no shelter in place. We're talking February, right? End of January, February. So I believe it was truly the national narrative that was going on at the time. And it still goes on. I mean, we have restaurant owners being, at that time, being picked on and called, are you serving bat soup? Just really just nasty stuff, and that's what you had to go to work to and run your business. And so now we're seeing a little bit of people, giving a hard time for wearing masks.
Yeah.
Do I really need to wear a mask? Yeah, you kind of do. if there's a sign, you probably should. It's their restaurant. But you see, I mean, I witnessed that, and you see those sort of, and certainly the business owners, they're professional and they want to be friendly. But there are some businesses that are standing up and voicing, say, no, we are not going to serve you. We're trying to be careful for everybody right now. And, and we're going to continue to do so.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, that's great.
And I forgot to tell you. So the restaurants, there was no charge for the restaurants to participate. Again, we really want to promote the ones that, who said, sure. All I asked was a little bit of an interview and chatting or whatever. But all we also had tied this to a membership. What we have in terms of fundraising is we have membership levels to show your support and love for Buford Highway. This is the first one that really talks about the food, and we call it the Taste of BuHi member. It's $50 a year. It's annual. It's an annual subscription. For the first year, this sort of the inaugural, it is a limited time membership, but you get this really cool We Love BuHi mask made by Sock Fancy, and you get that as part of your swag. And all of those proceeds will go back into the programs and certainly meeting the essential needs of community.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Talk more about the feeding families. I'm going to pop this up here.
Yes. So we are also, we talk about Buford Highway. We talk about our businesses. This one particularly is for restaurants. The other big piece of Buford Highway is our residents, our families, people that live here. And so our pivot at the early part of this, was that people were really not interested in listening to stories, but people were really interested in helping people survive through basic needs. Food is just the big, as I said, it's the lowest hanging fruit, right? It's critical. And back in March, we started hearing, we have a sister organization called Los Vecinos de Buford Highway, and I'll be bringing them back up later on. But we worked really closely together. We're both small organizations, and we saw that there was a lot of children that were not getting food. Now, a lot of the kids in this area are students of Title I schools. So with Title I schools, you have 40% or more of your students on free and reduced lunch, and you get federal funding for that. That makes you a Title I school, right? Or you fall into that category. When you get those funds, part of that accountability is making sure that these kids get the meals that they have applied for or need, and it's usually 2 meals a day, breakfast and lunch. I was a kid of free and reduced lunch, so I understand the need. When March happened and all the schools shut down, the food stopped, and because typically they don't, in a normal non-2020 school programs meals, they usually will disconnect during breaks and things like that, but they always kept going in the summer months, right? So they take certain pauses. So March, it was a little bit of a conundrum, I think. I think that everyone was kind of like, what do we do? What do we consider this as? Is this a small break? Is this, what's going on? The cab, rebuilt, of course, their food distribution, and they did have buses out where you could go collect, your meals. The problem is what we found is there was a lot of communities that were easily 2 to 3 miles away from that food site, right? So, and you had parents who are on the front lines, and who didn't have sort of the luxury of shelter in place. They still had to go to work. So you had kids at home, and, they're not going to let their kids walk 2 miles. And you guys know, Buford Highway, it's pedestrian, but there's really not the sidewalk support that they will really need there, right?
Yeah.
So, I remember the day I got a call and actually connected with my old violin teacher through Los Vecinos. She turned out to be this fierce woman as usual, Mrs. Alzaga. She's like, Lily, let's get together. I said, how can I help? So we go to Sequoia Middle School, and our job for that, she gave me a map. She did all the work. She laid it out, and she's like, all right, you've got 800 kids under your watch. So my job was to go there and pick up 800 bags and go back and drop it off to these neighborhoods. And we stood in line And they ran out of food. Not only did they run out of food for us, there were people still coming in lines, and so it was just a really scary time. Like the feeling of like, those were just basic essentials, right? So it just hit me hard. And so I shared that story with my board, and it kind of just, you talk about it. That's why stories just truly matter, right? And so stories and stats. And then it kind of started, one of my board members is the executive director of the Giving Kitchen, Ryan. He connected us to a local chef Chef Linton, of Eugene Kitchen, and amazing group of people. And he's like, you know what? We're going to figure out a way how to feed our communities, Buford Highway. So we did a prototype community, and we started it in April. Easter weekend was the launch. From Easter to July, through partners with Eugene Kitchen, World Central Kitchen, and a little bit of the Lee's Initiative in the early stages, and of course the Giving Kitchen, and community and cities. We all got together. Los Vecinos de Buford Highway was a big piece of it because they were sort of the ambassadors that had that trust with people who really needed food. And so we they cooked and delivered 52,000 meals from that time, impacting about 15,000 families. And we also partnered with the Latino Community Fund of Georgia. They also, everyone was sort of seeing that there's a need here. And so they ran a series called Day of Action, and it was their summer series of giving. And so once a month, I think it was starting in June, July, and August, we partnered with them to give food. And we even worked with the Mexican consulate and in the city of Doraville as well. And then we kind of rounded it all off in September with the city of Brookhaven and Latin American Association, and doing our sort of giving in the fall. So our Feeding Families campaign just speaks to, we know the need is there. We know the crisis is there. Now we got to look at the relief. What does that relief look like, right? When we think about the CDC's moratorium of not evicting people because of a health scare or pandemic, right? Yeah. What it doesn't have the ability to do is freeze the rent, right? So even though they can't kick you out or evict you, you still owe. Your money is still, it's sort of the debt is piling on. So, and that moratorium ends at the end of this year, right? So we are expecting a lot of evictions. We are expecting a lot of people to be, stuck with not being able to pay for utilities. And that always dominoes down to food as well, right? And we're talking families with children and and elders, And so when we started, my board and I, we started really talking about this, we really, really wanted to have something that was consistent on the highway where we can, and we're starting off with once a month. We're trying to raise $150,000 where we're doing this once a month. But we feel like I'm partnering with other food sources like local grocers, and the common market. We're working out with them as well, to give them the fresh produce boxes, because those to us really are the game changers. We have constituents and populations that love to cook. Food's a big piece of us, right?
Well, that's a really interesting thing, though. That's a really interesting point, though. The community knows how to cook. Even the kids. I would imagine the young kids know how to cook.
Well, and they know what they want, So we're really wanting this to be a culturally centric program in terms of when we're curating the boxes, the grocery boxes. But our goal is 500 families a month. We are partnering with the Mexican consulate in the next one in November. That is sort of our first one, but we are in a campaign mode right now. We are definitely raising funds because we want this to be at least a 1 full year, 12-month commitment to supporting our families.
Well, it's amazing what you're doing.
There's going to be a Sorry?
No, go ahead.
Well, there's going to be a backlash, I think. And, I think everybody wants to kiss 2020 goodbye. But I do think that first quarter, we're going to see a lot of impact, if not sooner, right? So we just want to be ready to support them the best way that we can.
Well, that's really smart. So you have to look ahead.
So you have to look ahead. You have to be
looking at this because the situation is going to unfold, and if we just look at what's happening now, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. So I commend you for that. What I'm curious though, where are you getting all the funding? How are you doing the funding? What's your funding source? Is it just working with foundations? Is it working with direct donations? What's your soup there?
It's a mix. It's all the above. Definitely corporations, definitely foundations, grants, COVID relief allocations. There's money on the table there for sure, and we have all outreach on the table to get as much support as we can to really make a difference for our families.
That's great. And folks, you can actually make a donation right there. We love BuHi.org. And you can find out all about the programs they've got coming up. And their website's full of information, so please do check it out.
And and we do talk about the future. We do talk about that turn, right? And the things that we're excited about, things that we want to play a bigger piece in local art. We really want to work with our children in our schools and sort of the leaders of the community to really highlight what we have here, the richness of it. So those are on, and I can't share too much because I like to surprise people. So those are tidbits that are coming in November. And then, of course, we've always wanted to do a night market down the road and really have a consistent marketplace, for our local mom and pops. But my biggest dream, because everyone has to have the magic wand or whatever, one day we'd love to have a museum type of brick and mortar place, but really more of a community center, where our stories can be shared so that people can come and really, get to know. Certainly not a tourist spot, but certainly a place to get educated and a starting point, where our local business.
You know where you need to see that? Georgia, the History Museum. You know what I'm talking about?
In Atlanta, we actually have. We were actually in the works of having some discussions, and prior to COVID, and a lot of conversations were a little bit paused because, again, you want to meet the immediate needs. But yeah, absolutely. We're in this for the long game, for the long haul. However more years ahead, right? So I'd love to, the Buford Highway's been around for about 40 years, and I'd love to see 40 more years if I make it that long.
Absolutely.
So morbid.
Well, I mean, listen, it's the time. Wow. Okay. So there's a lot we could talk about, but we're just running a little bit of time here. So I want to kind of close things out. Is there anything else you want to mention or share with everyone?
Follow us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram. We Love BuHi. We're on Twitter, we're on LinkedIn. Reach out. We're always looking for volunteers, particularly with our food distribution. We need people to help us assemble and distribute. And I have to tell you, it's just a beautiful, we put a lot of these events together, and there is a real tight community feel, like you recognize people recognize you, and relationships are being built. Or even getting tighter, right? So I think it's just a great way if you have the inkling to want to volunteer or reach out. We'll definitely keep you in the loop.
That's awesome. And again, folks, we love BuHi.org. Before we close, though, Lily, we ask all my guests to go ahead and recommend another guest for a future episode. Is there anyone you'd like to recommend?
Can I recommend two?
Sure.
Okay. The first one is Marco Palmo for Los Vecinos de Buford Highway. They are just such an awesome organization with just amazing people, and I love them. And so I really want you to talk to Marco. The other one is Deanna Parker, and she is the executive director for Athena's Warehouse. And that is an organization empowering and inspiring teen girls of Atlanta. And I just think that those are just two awesome, awesome organizations on a grassroots level that can really raise awareness on a lot of things.
Awesome. I look forward to talking with both. It's perfect. Thank you so much. And I really enjoyed talking with you. Thanks for all the work you're doing. I really enjoyed learning about that there's more than restaurants at Buford Highway. And what you're doing in feeding the families is so important. Thanks for thinking ahead in the future.
Thanks for having me so much. Thanks so much for your time. I'm sorry about the little audio stuff.
That's all right. Hopefully this echoes just me and no one else hears it.
Okay. Well, thank you guys so much.
All right. Bye, everyone. We'll see you next. We'll see you Thursday.